Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thorough Newspaper Analysis, which is brought to you by Losico. So, today we have two articles to be discussed. Both are from The Hindu. The first article is titled as The Starting Point for Self Regulation. So, this basically talks about the importance of self regulating the media houses in order to ensure that ethical and only the right facts reach the public. And also, the efficiency of the current regulatory regimes has been discussed in this article. The second one is a big push for education. This basically discusses about that what impact COVID-19 has had on education and what are the right steps that should be taken in this regard. And finally, we have the news and flash column. So if you're also preparing for judicial services examination, you can have a look at the Lord of the Courses, which is the judiciary test prep course coming from Lawseco. The link to this course is available in the description box below, and from the landing page, you can download free study material as well. So this is the multiple choice question from day before yesterday's discussion. Which article of the Indian Constitution provides for the assent of the President for a bill passed by the Parliament? Your options are Article 101, Article 105, Article 111, or Article 123. You can write down your answer in the comment section below. This is the descriptive question for the day. Discuss the efficiency of the bodies for media regulation in India. We'll see that we have primarily three bodies for media regulation in our country. So let's discuss about the first one, which is about the self-regulation for media houses. So why at all are we discussing this in here is that after the TRP scam, we all know under which the anchor and host of Republic TV, Arnav Goswami, was prosecuted. So after the TRP scam was brought into light, there has been increasing discussion in the media about ethical transgressions, manipulation, breaching lines protecting autonomy and efficacy of regulatory bodies. So basically, this brings us to the to look upon that how much are we able to bring out only the right and ethical information to the public, and what is the efficiency of the regulatory bodies, that how far or how well are they able to regulate the media in a positive manner, that not it does not firstly does not hamper the freedom of speech and expression on the first side, and secondly it also makes sure that the decency, morality and other reasonable grounds which are there in the reasonable restrictions are also maintained. So these are the main bodies for media regulation in India. First is the Press Council of India, which is perhaps the most important body in these. So it is created by the Press Council of India Act. Now, this is a very important question. From here, a prelims question can also pop up as to Press Council of India is a statutory body, a constitutional body, an extra constitutional body, or what kind of a body is it? So always keep in mind that since it has come through a particular act of the parliament, this is a statutory body since it has been it brought into existence with the idea or with the help of an act. So it is a statutory body which was created by the Press Council of India Act, which is headed by a former Supreme Court judge. So basically, the main purpose of the Press Council of India is to preserve the freedom of press and maintain and improve the standards of newspapers and news agencies. So the current number of members of the Press Council of India are 28. And if you look deeper into the article, you will be able to understand as to most of the members of this are the ones that belong to the executive. So that is why here Lord Justice Levenson's recommendation was there in UK that the regulatory bodies should be free of serving editors and MPs. Now, in this, the current 28 members of the Press Council of India, it has both. It has also the serving MPs from Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, as well as it has the serving editors of newspapers as well. Now, you can understand that when they're already serving to the public or they're already into power, then definitely they might not be able to act in a very unbiased manner, because they might want any kind of news to propagate which is beneficial for their own agenda. So that is why it was recommended by Lord Justice Levenson's in UK that the regulatory bodies should be definitely, they should be free from any kind of serving editors of MPs. We can definitely take the ones that had been MPs or the editors but now they're no more serving, but this currently has been rejected by most of the governments of the world, and even in Indian setup we can see that amongst the 28 members of the Press Council of India, a lot of them are the serving MPs as well as the editors of newspapers. Then the second one is the News Broadcasting Standards Authority, which was created by the News Broadcasters Association. And next we have Broadcasting Content Complaints Council, which is specifically to deal with the complaints against entertainment and general segment television programs. And fourthly, we have the four of them. And fourthly, we have the News Broadcasters Federation, which was created by the members who had left the NBA, which was the News Broadcasting Standards Authority. And it is basically primarily promoted by Arnab Goswami's Republic TV. Now, we can see that these four bodies, if we talk about just having the bodies per se, they are very much efficient in their functioning only if it is provided that what are the functions they have to perform. But if we try to look out into the practical grounds as to how far are they able to achieve their functions and how far are they able to regulate the media in a positive manner, these bodies have been unable to implement their primary mandate, and that is to ensure freedom while adhering to agreed ethical and professional standards. Now see, whenever we talk about freedom of speech and expression, we know that the freedom of press also falls under Article 19(1)(a) of the Indian Constitution. Now, in such a scenario, we know that to Article 19(1)(a), we have Article 19 Clause 2, which ensures that there are the reasonable restrictions that are taken up in care whenever there is an exercise of Article 19(1)(a), that is freedom of speech and expression. So whenever, now it is actually the beauty of the media that whenever it is propagating any news in the public domain, or it is bringing forward any fact, or talking about anything in general, it has to make sure that it is exercising positively its freedom of speech and expression, but at the very same time it is not accounting on any of the reasonable restrictions which fall under Article 19 Clause 2. So that is why there is always because we say that no fundamental right or no right per se is absolute in nature, and that is why it is to be made sure that the freedom is also given to the media houses, but at the same time they also obey to the ethical and professional standards for delivery of news. So here, what steps can be taken? We should build in-house mechanisms. Now, this is actually the main article, what it is about, that it says that we should have in-house mechanism, that every media house, every newspaper should have its own in-house mechanism to regulate the things or regulate the news articles that it actually propagates in the public. So they have given the example of the reader's editor of the Hindu. So basically this article is itself from the Hindu. So they are actually talking about their own reader's editor body that they have, which is a full-time internal ombudsman. So basically, as we know that the very office of ombudsman is the one that looks into any kind of actions arbitrary in nature, and then it will be the duty of the ombudsman to correct and rectify those actions. So the functions that are done primarily by the in-house or the reader's editor of the Hindu is that they examine all the complaints that they receive regarding any kind of news brought in by the Hindu or any article published by the Hindu, and effect course correction if there is any error. So also there was a study by South African National Editors Forum which gave the recommendation that the statute of ombudsman would become effective and beneficial to both news platforms and the industry of the news in general only when the news managers heed their rulings, which means that the managers of the news, whoever, like be it the manager as in manager of the news. Now here we're not talking about particularly the post of manager itself, but rather all the authorities that are important or that are key or that are pivotal in managing ethical delivery of news. So it is important that they understand that their own rulings have to be followed on themselves as well. And that is why this only will create a complete environment of checks and balances. So the next article talks about inclusive, flexible, and resilient education. So we'll not take it into a lot of detail because we have many a times dealt with this issue of hampering the education services during the times of COVID-19. But since 24th January was the third edition of the International Day of Education, so this date should also be remembered. So basically it was proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly to honor education and its value to humanity and sustainable development. So theme for 2021 was recover and revitalize education for the COVID-19 generation. So now here are some facts which we have obviously discussed many times, but please, if you're watching this session for the first time regarding this topic, please note down these facts. These are very handy when it comes to any essay that is regarding the education, because in the current scenario, it is not only the health and economy that has been hampered by COVID-19, but also the sector of education has been, it has been hugely impacted. So please note down these facts which are regarding the education. So due to the COVID-19, around 1.6 billion students from 190 countries of the world were affected by shutdowns of the schools. And if we talk about India specifically, more than 1.5 million schools, that is 286 million school children, and they were affected. So this is a very huge number. And according to the UNESCO estimates, schools worldwide were closed for 3.5 months on an average, and more than 5 months in some places as well. And only 0.8% of the $11.8 trillion of the global COVID response was allocated to education, which is a very, very, very small amount of the entire amount which was allocated for fighting the COVID-19. Though definitely there are some things which are to be kept on priority, like definitely the health sector, but even education has had to see a huge setback in this time, and thus better allocation of funds and more attention to education is required at this particular time. So if we talk about the change in education, the relevant data according to the global scenario has been that the remote learning is out of reach for more than 500 million students globally, and over 800 million students face significant disruptions to their education. And if we talk about India, so it is mainly driven by information and communication technology, because as we know that the time when online classes were brought in by the schools, so the areas which did not even have electricity, so you can imagine that how will they ever have a decent internet connection and any kinds of smart gadgets like a smartphone or even a laptop. So though governments, like if we take the example of Kerala government, it has actually taken very proactive steps in making the all the areas, even in the remotest areas, come under the ambit of the internet services, and it has actually made significant changes. But still, in various other states, it is still a far-fetched dream to bring to bridge the digital gap which exists between the rural and urban areas in India. And then India's National Education Policy 2020 made significant efforts to develop courses to reach all leaders via internet and airwaves. So that has been one effort, but still the implementation is the bigger question. So with this, let's see what do we have for news in flash today. Riza cloth. Now this is another important point for our prelims exam. Tripura government. So Riza cloth or Riza was seen in news sometimes. So what is it? It can be asked, or to which government or which state it actually belongs. So it belongs to the state of Tripura. So Tripura government aims to promote Riza nationally as Tripura's signature garment, beside providing uniforms to Anganwadi and Asha workers. So it has recently been branded under India Handloom brand. So this, as you can see, this red hand-woven cloth. So this is a very beautiful cloth over there, and it actually signifies the traditional colors of Tripura. So this is called as Riza. So it is a hand-woven cloth used by state's indigenous communities as a signature identity of the state. So it is used as a female upper garment, headgear, stole, or a present to express respect. So the next one is 11th National Voters Day, which was celebrated on 25th January today, to encourage, facilitate, and maximize enrollment, especially for the new voters. So the day is utilized to spread awareness among voters and promoting informed participation in the electoral process. So the theme for 2021 is making our voters empowered, vigilant, safe, and informed. So this was all for today. We hope it was a good and informative session for you all. If you wish to download the PDF for today's slides, you can join our Telegram group, the link to which is there in the description box below. And for any other information, you can also visit our official website. Thank you so much.